Welcome to Larry's Library, and welcome to another Top 10 Tuesday. What I have for you this time is my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Now, I have done some movie lists before. I've done my top 10 favorite horror films. I've done fantasy films. I've done my favorite crime movies. And if you want to take a look at those, I will link them above so you can check those out. And I've always kind of teased that I could do a top 10 favorite movies, period, of all time, if people wanted it. And several commenters have said, do it, do it. So now I have to do it. And it was difficult, let me tell you. Now, although I don't watch a lot of movies now, because there's so much great TV, in the past, I used to be quite a film buff. So I started out with this list. It was about, I had about 30 some odd movies on it, just off the top of my head. And then I slowly whittled those down. My wife helped me out there by reminding me, oh, what about that? What about that? So hopefully later on I won't remember a few more. I'm like, oh, damn, I forgot all about this or that. I mean, what are you going to do? Before I get started, I got to say, there's a ton of honorable mentions, and I could go on for 10 minutes with that. I won't. But for example, there's a couple of Monty Python films that would have made this list. The Meaning of Life probably would be the big one. It nearly made number 10. There are, I think, speaking of Monty Python, there are 3 different Terry Gilliam directed films that would have made this list, but it just couldn't get them in there. Talking about, let's see, Baron Munchausen, Brazil, Time Bandits. There's probably a few more, but that was 3 that I really wanted to get it in there. I just couldn't make room. If you haven't seen Brazil, it's kind of a little known gem. Find that. Terry Gilliam's Brazil is dark and awesome. Check that out if you haven't. And that's the honorable mention before I get right in, starting at number 10. One more before I give you number 10. Let me give you this one conceit. There's three slots on this list are taken up with multi-film franchises, you might call them. And I did that simply because I couldn't pick one, or one of the 3, or one of the 2, or whatever. So I let them take up a whole slot. Hey, it's my list, my rules, right? so let's just get started. At number 10, I have the Rankin and Bass Tolkien movies. Now, what I'm talking about here is the animated from the late 70s, Rankin and Bass, their take on The Hobbit and Return of the King. Now, why didn't they do the other movies? Well, from my research, I think it's because Ralph Bakshi beat him to the punch, and he had secured the rights to do Lord of the Rings. Now, I did like the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings. I mean, I liked it more before I knew better, if you know what I mean. I liked it more before I actually read Lord of the Rings and seen what Peter Jackson did with it, but I did enjoy it. I mean, for one thing, back then, there wasn't a whole lot of fantasy films to choose from. So it's not like we had a whole catalog like we do now, So, yeah, I have fond memories of that movie, but, with all the rotoscoping and some odd things they did. But it probably doesn't hold up when compared to, the better version we have now, of course. But, so number 10 is Rankin and Bass's Tolkien movies. And if you want me to name them, it's The Hobbit and Return of the King. Now, The Hobbit is way better than Return of the King, but Return of the King has some great music in it, too. I mean, who can forget, where there's a whip, there's a way. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. At number 9, I have the Star Wars trilogy. And I'm talking about the original Star Wars trilogy, 1977 to 1983, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I didn't want to group them together like that. Somebody said, well, just pick one. Which one's your favorite? And I'm like, that's a rough one. I want to say Return of the Jedi. But there's some stuff in the other 2 that I like better than the stuff in Return. I mean, it was just an impossible choice for me to make. So I'm going to let it take up one slot at number 9 and say the original Star Wars trilogy. At number 8, I've got Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, this came out in 1977. Richard Dreyfuss stars. It's fantastic. I mean, if you haven't seen this, you really are missing out, and you need to check it out. It's fabulous. Number 7 in my favorite films of all time is Kevin Smith's Dogma. Now, this one came out in 1999, and it has everything. It has angels, and it has God himself, or should I say herself. Now, I don't want to have a big spoiler here if you haven't seen this film from 1999, and it's possible you haven't, because this one has been lost media for a while, and it's been completely out of print and unobtainable because Weinstein owned it. But I hear that's about to change, so maybe by the time some people view this video, we'll have new editions of Dogma out. I sure hope so, because I want to get a 4K Blu-ray of Dogma. I will buy it this time. You know, I had a chance before and I didn't do it, and I will do it when it gets reissued, and I'm hoping it does. But yeah, Dogma is very much kind of, I mean, if you liked, in comic books, if you like Preacher, then you're going to love Dogma, okay? If you didn't like Preacher, if you hated that, then you're going to hate Dogma. Let's just leave it at that. At number 6, I have Heathers. Heathers came out in let's see, in my notes here, in 1988. And it's still one of my favorites of all time. We've got Winona Ryder, we've got Christian Slater. This movie is tremendous. This is black humor all throughout. And if you're not, if you don't like dark humor, then stay away from this one. But if you do, you're in for a treat. If you have not seen Heathers, go check it out now. What are you waiting for? Yeah, right in the middle spot of the countdown at number 5, I have the movie that started the MCU, Iron Man. This is the first one that came out in 2008. Jon Favreau directs beautifully, and we've got Robert Downey Jr. becoming Tony Stark. I mean, when I first heard of this casting, I thought, oh, I'm not sure he's right for that, you know? He's not, I picture Tony Stark as taller and just different, you know? I don't know about that one. And guess what? He completely nailed it. Now I can't think of Tony Stark without thinking of Robert Downey Jr. I'm not sure anyone can at this point. He completely owns this role. You know, and the movie just works. It works so well. It was the first, arguably the first of the MCU films. And I'm not sure, well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. They have never topped it. And they've only kind of matched it on some levels 2 or 3 times. Never been exceeded, I don't think. This, to me, is the epitome of the superhero film. This is the best. The other 2 Iron Man movies were okay. The third one, less okay than the second one. But that first one, I mean, it's just it. At number 4, I have the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, these came out between 2001 and 2003. And, you know, if you've watched my other movie top 10s, you know, specifically my fantasy one, then you know how I feel about this franchise. This was the best. There's so many wonderful moments throughout the 3 movies that I was hard-pressed to pick which one is my favorite of the 3. So I just let it take up one slot. Yeah, I mean, there are some choices Peter Jackson made in these that I could have done without. There's a few things here that I think were just added and didn't need to be added. And there's a few things that were not included that I think should have been included. So I'm not going to call these perfect films, but they are awesome. And I love them dearly. And that's why they are number 4 in the countdown. At number 3, I've got Raiders of the Lost Ark. This came out in 1981. And it is, I guess, just when I think of adventure, I think of Indiana Jones. And when I think of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first, the best, this is the one. This movie is just joyous. I mean, you know, Nazis getting their faces melted off. I mean, come on. You know, who's not for that? If you haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, I don't know what to tell you. In some ways, I pity you because you've never seen it, you know, and I'm like, what have you done with your life, you know? But on the other hand, I kind of envy you because you get to see it for the first time. And that is such a great thing. But then again, it's also great the 5th time and the 6th time and the 10th and the 12th time. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but I would say at least 15 times. And it just holds up. It holds up so great. From the music to the acting, it's just, well, I don't want to say tremendous again, but it's just fantastic. Number 2, from 1980, I've got the Blues Brothers. Now, this is John Landis at his best, arguably. Is this a musical? Is it not a musical? I've seen arguments for both. I've made arguments for both, actually. And at first I thought, okay, this is a musical. But then I got into a little debate once on Omar's channel. And it was like, okay, maybe it's not a musical. But either way, it's a awesome comedy, adventure, action film with music. And I love it. In fact, my love for blues music was really kind of came out of watching this movie. I didn't know much about blues. I was just a rock and pop guy, and I seen that little clip where John Lee Hooker is on the corner there and he's playing his guitar. Boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. That little snippet of John Lee Hooker made me research blues music and opened up a whole new world of music for me. And so that, I'll never forget that. But Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, oh man, this movie, it never quits. Carrie Fisher even plays a psychopathic ex-girlfriend. It's great. Yeah, another one, if you haven't seen, go watch it immediately. Blues Brothers, the first one. But having said all that, my number one favorite film of all time is one that I've probably seen, oh man, I'm thinking more than 20 times. And probably 8 times, maybe 10 times, 8 to 10 times at the movie theater. And then over and over again afterwards. And I'm talking about Ghostbusters. The first Ghostbusters film from 1984 is my favorite film of all time. At one time, years ago, I mean, I'm old. I'm in my 50s here. But years ago, I used to have the entire script memorized. And I didn't really do it on purpose. It was just from watching the movie over and over and over and studying scenes and rewinding the tape. Yeah, VHS. Back and forth and watching a bit over and over. I actually had the entire script memorized. I still have pretty good segments of it. It just stuck in there forever. But not the whole thing anymore. Now, if I start watching it, it'll come back to me in pieces. And I'll be able to just just say the words as it's on the screen. That's how much I love this movie. You've got Sigourney Weaver, who's fantastic. Rick Moranis is great in it. I mean, just an all-star cast. And it is so good. It blends genres together into this action comedy that really, I don't think had been done as, well, it had been done, but not this successfully before Ghostbusters, I think. And yeah, and I think it holds up. It's a great one, and really everything on this list is great, and this order could change at any time. I tried to put it in sequential order as best I could, but if you ask me a month from now or a year from now, it could very well change. And some of my honorable mentions might slide in there and push some of these out. It's possible, at least the bottom half of the list, but probably not the top half, unless something really comes out that just blows my mind, I don't know. So that is my list for now, and that's what I'm going with. Are any of these your favorites of all time? Let me know down in the comments, and if you haven't subscribed, please do that, and give me a thumbs up if you like this, and I'm going to see you next time.